It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. The Detroit Lions again were not able to put together a consistent performance against the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field and paid for it with a 28-13 lackluster defeat last Sunday afternoon. The Lions must get ready to face a hot Denver Broncos team led by Russell Wilson and Coach Campbell's mentor, Sean Payton. The Lions still have complete control of their divisional destiny, but must improve down the stretch beginning Saturday night at Ford Field. We'll talk about what went wrong in Chicago, what we see has been happening to the team over the last 5 weeks, and what it will take to beat the Broncos. Now here's your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Brzezinski, Drew, and it is December 13th, a Wednesday, and I'm joined by Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners for the roundtable. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing well, Drew. It's the season to get down the playoff stretch.
Yes, it is. And also we're joined by the Uper, Brad Harrison, via Wisconsin. How you doing, Brad?
Hey, Drew. Happy to be here, ready for a little therapy with my friends.
So let the session begin, shall we? Guys, we've talked about in every review a lot, and everyone sees it. Since the Monday night game, the Lions have really been struggling, but have managed to pull out wins. And, with the exception of the Packer game was an exception. And this game, certainly we had concerns about, but wow, fellas, 28-13, the Lions take a defeat in Soldier Field. And Coach, start with you. Your impression of this performance?
Not good. And it's a saying that I've been saying a lot lately in a lot of different facets of things, but it's something that we said in football a lot. When things start looking a certain kind of way in games, and maybe things go your way in the end in regards to the score, but really as far as your play, eventually the chickens come home to roost. And we saw this on Sunday. This has been coming for quite some time. We've been outscored significantly, really since, in the last 3 games, we've been outscored significantly, even though we won one of those games. We outside of a 21-0 start, we really have not played very well at all in the last 3 games. So, there's pause for concern. I don't think this is the time to rail against fans, and it's certainly no time for a mutiny. And if that's what's happening, people don't really know what's going on. But fans have every right in the world to be concerned and to air their grievances, and because we've seen this before. We have seen this before.
We have. Uper, Brad, your thoughts? I know you've seen it before too. Talk about how your feelings in this game.
Well, I appreciate Coach's comments about the airing of the grievances, because as we come into the Festivus season,
oh, look at that!
I got a lot of problem with you people, and I'm only going to put it on this one day. But Andy's right. This is where this has been headed. And this isn't a one-person issue. Change this guy, do that. No, there's a lot of problems that have bubbled up. So, but I do think football, just like in life, it's how you respond, right? Our team has the opportunity to respond.
I like that.
You got 4 days. You got 4 games. You got 4 games to respond, and you can't play all 4 at once. So let's see what you got on Saturday night, because I don't know what you have. I don't. They're shorthanded in positions. There's talent that is not performing to the level that they can. There's coaching decisions that seem, desperate, and we'll see. I'm curious to see what the response will be.
No, great points, guys. And everyone's frustrated, certainly. To start 9-2, best start since 1962. So I'm trying to look at this team as a fan and not in the context of this is 2023. This is the team we have. This is 1980 or 1990. So the ghost of Lions past, I don't want to think about it too much, but it's certainly when you've seen how they perform in these injuries. Heck, they've been dealing with injuries since week 1. I mean, they've had guys out every week, at times in significant amounts, but every week there's somebody out, and it's significant. But they've been able to step up and cover it. My personal thought was that 3-game stretch where they played Monday night and then a couple Thursdays in a row, I think it was 3. It came out to 3 games in 11 days. That I could see how that would have worn them out. But then you'd hoped after that 10-day break after the Thanksgiving game, you'd be able to kind of get it together. And we certainly saw that in the first quarter of the Saints game, right? But Coach, like you said, they've been outscored significantly. When you think about it, they've been outscored. They've given up 56 points in 2 games in 7 quarters, and they scored 21 in the first 7 minutes of that Saints game. Okay. So 12 and 13. So yeah, it's 56 to 25. They've been outscored in the last 7 quarters. That's significant. That puts it into context. Now, this team's still 9-4. We could say the schedule looks on paper soft or doable or whatever. I ain't thinking or saying that anymore, because we thought last week might have been that way and it wasn't. So this is important. They've got 2 huge games coming up against the Vikings. This game against Denver, we'll talk about shortly, on Saturday night, is going to be huge. And even though it's a non-conference game, it's a home game. And then the game at Dallas, which is going to be an absolute beast. So really puts an emphasis on the game coming up. But before we get too far into that, we need to talk about what exactly happened there in Chicago. And before we get into our player talk, especially we dig into the offense some very specifically, and we'll talk about the defense. But I want to go on record and saying I don't have a lot of roses to throw this week. And I don't think anybody would want any thrown at them individually, because this is a team game, a team sport, and they did not play well as a team at all. Not a lot went well. Yes. In Sunday in Chicago, we start out with the quarterback and the leader, Jared Goff. And man, last week, Coach, we were talking about a QBR of 117.8. This week, we're talking about a QBR of 54.6. One of the worst performances of the season for Jared Goff. Not just on paper statistically, but the eye test. Talk about his performance, if you would.
Well, I think you did it pretty well, and the numbers before us, don't really fool anybody. Okay. I mean, and I know it could almost be to the point of sensitivity in regards to some things, but here's the deal: what Jared Goff cannot do, okay, and he cannot get you out of trouble. He cannot shake a play free. He's not going to do it with his feet. And that means we have to block pretty impeccably. And if we're going to struggle up front, he's going to struggle. And that's something to think about. It's something to think about moving forward. Now, I know we want to invest in this offensive line. It's not really been healthy for as great of an offensive line as it's supposed to be. It's rarely ever configured in its full entirety. So, somebody's hurt, usually. And that needs to be a concern. First and foremost, our tackles did not play very well. Whether it was penalties, not being able to pass protect very well, they did not play very well this past game. We have issues at guard, based off of people not being able to play very often. Jonah Jackson, and right guard's been a revolving door. Great in part because not just because of Hank Vitai's injury, but also Frank Ragnow's been hurt, on and off the entire year. We've had to do some plugging in at center. So this is right there. It tells you kind of the state of affairs that we're in. If we're a running team and we have a quarterback that is an accurate thrower and not a runner, we need that offensive line to pass protect impeccably and run block impeccably. And if their health is going to be of concern, so will the offense. So Jared Goff, he is going to very much like probably, a lot of quarterbacks in the league. If things are going well, he's going to look, his numbers, that QBR is going to be in the triple digits. Things are going to look awesome. If things aren't going well, he's going to be a double digit, mid double digit, in this case, QBR, and he's going to, barely hit 50% of his passes and not really have very much, impressive things going on. He's going to take sacks. And it's really, really rough seeing those 3rd down and 5s turn into 4th and 15s. If we're going to be concerned about one thing with Jared Goff, as we, and this guy right here has said that they should very much consider an extension with him. And I don't waver on that. I mean, not within 1 week, but for those people that have exhibited some concern, they're not blind fools either. That's not fair to them either, because this guy, there are things that certain quarterbacks do that he does not do. He's not going to be able to do. We either have to live with that or understand that deficit. And that is, he's not going to get us out of trouble. So we have to get this offensive line figured out for him.
Absolutely. Brad, your thoughts?
I mean, what to add? What to add? I mean, I don't have much more than what Coach just said. He doesn't need to be extended right now, right? Like, that's, Kirk Cousins has been in Minnesota for a long time on contracts he didn't draw up. So there's no, maybe good on Brad Holmes that he, that trigger wasn't pulled when we all thought it could be pulled.
It's hard. I mean, you want to, but at the same time, there's breaks.
But he's 9-4 as our quarterback. He's gotten us to this point. The freshest memory we have is a bad one, and it's all works in together. And yes, Jared, unfortunately, hasn't made things on his own. But he's also made some great plays. I remember some 3rd and 8s, some 4th down throw, right? But that's when the line is protecting. That's when the route is crisp. That's when the going to the ground with the ball in your hands, right? Like, everything has to be working, and that's football, right? Like, we just lived through a terrible experience, guys. That was an awful game. And so the response is what I'm most interested in. And to me, I don't know what the response is going to be. I'm not confident that this thing can turn the way it's been headed over these last few weeks. So prove us wrong. Just Jared, you're the pro. Just do what people think you cannot do.
Yep. Hard to argue with either of you guys. I'm going to throw in my 2 cents because I'm a fan too, and I got an opinion. I'm concerned. I'm very disappointed because to come this far and to start off as well as they did, to not take advantage of this opportunity, and I like that this is an opportunity to improve here. Take advantage of it. I mean, that's PC speak in the 21st century, but it's legitimate. It's an opportunity to improve right now. All is far from lost. They control their destiny in the division. If they can beat Minnesota, if they can split with the Vikings, if they can go 2-2 down a stretch, they win the division. But again, I really hate to see this team with a mindset that they're set, that, let's just do enough to get to that point. This team's very capable. They should win this division. It would be a cruel irony if they did not. And quite frankly, they should win a playoff game. That is our expectation. I'm not going to waver on that personally. That's what I think they should do. Am I concerned about Jared Goff? Yeah, you make a great point, Coach. That footwork is a concern, that a lot has to go right for him to be effective. On the flip side, thankfully, Jared Goff, when that situation's right, he is very good. And Brad, you mentioned that too. And I like that. So I get people being concerned about Goff and maybe being hesitant about re-signing. I do get that. I'm not sure the answer is Hendon Hooker right this second. I love the draft pick. I like Hendon Hooker a lot. He may be the future. I don't know that. I don't know that. He's coming off a significant knee injury. So it ain't this year, folks, and probably ain't next year either. But yeah, he's the kind of guy with his skill set that he addresses that. He's got the ability to move. He's got a big arm. I mean, he's got talent. I'm going to trust Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell if that's the case. If Jared Goff doesn't get an extension, they go with Hendon Hooker, then that's not a bad thing for the Detroit Lions then, as far as I'm concerned. If they say we're going to extend Jared Goff, then obviously they have a lot of confidence in Jared Goff. I think the injuries on the offensive line have definitely been significant, no question, and that line is outstanding. They built this team around the trenches. They're going to have to reload now to get better even next year. But again, this season's far from over, and they have a lot to play for, and they've got a lot going for them. And let's talk about the running game. As poorly as this team played, they were able to get some yards on the ground. And I'll be honest, Coach, I watched this game, and at the half, I was like, I cannot believe this team's winning. The Lions are winning 13-10 at the half. And they played a really poor first half. Now they trumped that in the second half because they played even worse in that half, and that was all she wrote. But let's talk about David Montgomery. He only got 10 carries but 66 yards. Not a bad performance for him. He didn't get the ball a lot though. Let's talk about the running game.
Well, 6.6 yards per carry. I mean, that's good. That's good. He had about 85 all-purpose yards there with only 13 touches. And I believe Jahmyr Gibbs' rushing yard totals very, very similar, if not identical to that of maybe he got a few more yards than Montgomery. But we really ran the football towards 150 yards, I'm thinking, as a team.
So, he had 10 yards.
Yeah, he had one more carry for the exact same amount of yards and 3 less yards on the exact same amount of receptions. So they really, that was such a calculated. If you think about that, wow. I mean that's like, did they try to do that? Because that's perfect balance. I mean, neither one of them can complain about that. One had 10 for 66, the other had 11 for 66. One had 3 for 19, and one had 3 for 16. So they really were utilized that way, very, very well. 132 yards between the two of them on 21 carries. That's a good game. 6 receptions for 35 yards. They're running backs. A lot of these are flare type, passes or flat passes where they're not going to, gain a ton of yards downfield or getting the ball downfield at least. So, I think the running backs were utilized pretty well. And the fact that we ran for 132 yards, in a very, very subpar performance is some silver lining that shows you what we do well. Even when we're at our worst, we ran for 132 yards between those two running backs. So, obviously your running game, when you're down and behind, ends up getting kind of, abandoned. You gain more yards through the air, you get caught up through the air. And that's what ended up happening in the second half as the game, kind of got away from us. But I think, I think both Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs were fine. And that is a testament also to what we do well and really what the game plan needs to remain. And that's to let these backs carry the load.
And I'm looking at Jahmyr on a screen here. What a missed opportunity. With that.
Oh, that was a touchdown.
That was a touchdown. That changes this game.
That was a touchdown.
Yep. The blocking was there in front of him. It was a great play call, and it was just a miss. And he's a rookie, and he's so fast. It's like he's going so fast that it just got away from him. And you think about that play. If that play turns into a touchdown, what are we talking about? Goff's going to have a lot more yards in his stats. Not that stats matter as much as wins and losses, but that was a huge play that did not go our way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just, statistically they ran the ball pretty effectively, quite frankly, like coaching you pointed out, Brad. But yeah, I mean, uncharacteristic. He's been an outstanding rookie. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, but yeah, he had a rough game. I know he had the drop, and then there was a fumble that was recovered, but yeah, it wasn't his best, but still I mean, 6 yards per carry. That's take that all day long. I'm not sure. Before we go to the receivers coach, why I mean, I know the game started getting away a little bit, but I never felt like it was so out of reach that they needed to just start throwing like crazy. It seemed like they were running the ball pretty well. I don't know if abandoning that necessarily was the answer, but what do I know? But they ran the ball pretty effectively, and then they started throwing a lot, and they just were not clicking in the passing game.
Well, yeah, and some criticism goes the way of the coaches. And, everybody's anointed and carried Ben Johnson around on their shoulders the whole season long, and how he's so invaluable, and, he's the hot commodity, and we're going to lose him. And we're already shedding tears about, our offensive coordinator being the first head coaching hire of the new season cycle. He's not without flaws too, and he did not have a good game plan. There were several times. I mean, there was one of the fourth downs, just from the play call to getting set and the execution and the actual play that was called was just not good. I mean, it was just bad. It had no chance, and that's on Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. So I mean, if they get away from things, that's kind of what's referred to as being impatient. And when an offensive coach gets impatient, it's kind of like an impatient poker player. They start showing their hand. You start tipping things.
Yeah.
And the other players on the table are able to take advantage. And I think that there may be some pause and some evidence of that that we saw at times as well over at Soldier Field.
Yeah, no question about that. I think that's a great point. That's a good analogy too. You lose patience. Yeah, absolutely. I'm guilty of it myself in fantasy football at times. Start making trades that maybe don't work out so good, but it happens. They got to right the ship. Brad, I'm going to ask you about the passing game and the receiver and tight end performance, but I'm not going to freeze the screen here. I'm going to kind of go through it a little bit before we start talking. The guy who had the best game was Josh Reynolds, 44 yards on 3 catches.
Yeah, and the touchdown.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 catches, 21 yards. One of his he struggled a little bit.
Few drops, yeah.
Few drops. Sam Laporte, only 2 catches, 23 yards. And Jameson Williams, no catches, only 1 rushing attempt for 4 yards. So I'll leave it there with JMO. And Brad, talk about number one. Nobody is, even though I know Goff didn't play well, but obviously they were able to run the ball with some effectiveness. But what the heck happened in your view?
Did we just lose all our viewers? Like, are we? This is painful. This is painful. I mean, this is not what we have seen all year. I mean, this is the outlier, right? Like, give Chicago credit. This is, I look at their record and go, what? How have they only won 4? I mean, that defense was flying around. That defense had us stopped. And
you're pouring gas on the fire now.
Ooh, hard to say, right? Tough to watch.
Yeah.
So, this is a Ben Johnson issue, as once again, Coach Shields taking all of our good points here, and I appreciate him for it, but he's not wrong. This is design. This is the line not giving Jared the time to even consider a downfield throw. I mean, all these three catches are both slants, and man, this had better been an incredible week at Allen Park, because the work needs to be done there to see what happens on a Sunday. And we have, to see Amon-Ra dropping balls like this isn't him.
No.
And so, can we just chalk this one up and say this is a terrible game and we're never going to see this again? I mean, maybe that's what you got to do. I mean, I think, what did Campbell say? He can get ornery or irritable.
Hey, yeah, I thought that was a great quote. He
Maybe
said,
I need to get irritable. I can do that.
Yeah, and it's like, good. I think he recognized. You know what it is? This is just my view. Take it or leave or whatever, folks. But everyone gets complacent. It doesn't matter who you. Otherwise, you don't need coaches, right, Coach? I mean, if everyone was self-motivated and self-sufficient, you wouldn't need any managers or coaches or anything. That's why.
Well, that's what Wayne Woodrow Hayes said.
Yes, exactly.
He did.
Avoid it like a plague, and he's right.
We all need to be pushed.
And sometimes literally, apparently, so he felt. But yeah, I mean, it's like, and I'm not accusing them of reading their own press clippings or anything like that. I think this is a really very grounded, focused football team that is kind of, let's face it. I think what it is a lot of teams. I apologize. I forget where I read it today, but it's like teams have caught up now. They know what the Lions do on offense. Now it's time to get a little more creative, change it up again, because I think that's what's happening. We're seeing it over the last 5 games. It's been a struggle. And I know the injuries are there, but that no team's ever going to use that as an excuse, and certainly no coaching staff will. So what do they need to do differently? And not just on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball too. They've got to step up and find another gear and find another way. Now they're a good enough team and a talented enough team to do it. These coaches didn't all of a sudden drop 50 IQ points, guys, right? I mean, they know how to coach this game. These players, they're 9-4 this year. They finished 7-2 last year. So in the last 22 games, they're 16-6. This is a damn good football team. I ain't jumping off the ship. I ain't calling for no heads, none of that crap. I'm pissed. I am. But I'm not, there's no irrationality. Beat Denver Saturday. That's it. And how do you do that? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we jump into that, guys, let's talk about the defense a little bit. Pull her up real quick. Ugly on the ground. They allowed 142 rushing yards. That's very uncharacteristic. They've been pretty stout against the run. Man, number 54 wasn't in though, right? And that's a concern. 223 passing yards by Justin Fields, who that's not his forte per se. He contributed significantly to that 142. Another 28 points against. They did get 3 sacks, but you're going to get that on a running quarterback. And I wasn't overly impressed with the pass rush. And I'll ask you about that, Coach, right now. I saw a lot more blitzing in that game, but it seemed like there were times they had Fields and couldn't wrap them up, and there were missed tackles in this game. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, there's some player deficit issues that are very clear. When there's a quarterback that has the dynamic feet that we're talking about, that can get himself out of trouble with his feet, we are that team that just does not seem to be able to corral that kind of player with consistency. And that's one in part by player and the archetype of the player and the need for us to acquire, more and better talent. And 2, our defensive scheme, we need some solvency. They made adjustments and it got better. Unfortunately, then he was able to settle underneath that contain and throw the ball downfield accurately for a pretty decent game, all in all for Justin Fields. So, I mean, that photo that you selected here, Drew, with, Broderick Martin and it looks like, I think Farmer Jones making a dive at the legs and Josh Paschal in the just kind of in a jogging type pursuit of Justin Fields running down the field. That was a prototypical photo of that game for at least the early portions. And then you could have a second photo of him throwing the ball, looking like he's Joe Montana in his prime, in the second half. So, I mean, we do not do well with a dual threat quarterback. We don't. And that's kind of where the hotness of the league is going. So that's something Aaron Glenn needs to address. Coach Campbell needs to address, and Aaron Glenn needs to address. And we have to get better football talent, in and around Aiden Hutchinson. It needs to be deeper. We have good players, but we have some injuries, and we need to add more and better perimeter help too. James Houston is one of those players, and he's coming back. So this is good. But that is where, for me, I'm going to start with it. I know we can talk about the secondary, and it's only fair that others get to. But I think up front we've got quite a bit of work to do.
Yep, can't argue with that. No question. Brad, let's talk about your thoughts on this game. What did you see that kind of stood out to you in terms of the performance of this defense?
Well, the same thing. I mean, the mobile quarterback is our kryptonite. I mean, we just can't. We don't have the guys that can keep up. I think our offense, that's our chance to win a playoff game, to score a bunch, and because you're going to have to, because this defense is going to give up a bunch. I mean, I don't even know. When did we play Tampa Bay? Like, how many weeks ago was that? Because that was a defensive game.
Yes.
I don't know what I've seen since. And it's a talent issue. Every roster in the NFL has its deficiencies. There's no perfect roster. I mean, the salary cap makes it that way. That's how they want this thing, right? Like, I thank God we're not 6-7. I feel like a 6-7 team. I feel like a fan of a 6-7 team. I'm not. I'm a fan of a 9-4 team, but I'm watching a defense that go, whoa, like we can't get off the field. It's, man, I hope the Bears give up on Justin Fields. They'd be crazy to. But man, I hope that town is tired of him. Give me somebody else.
Yeah, I hear you.
But the kid can't throw. I forget about that. Justin Fields cannot throw the football as a quarterback. But man, he's a nightmare every time we play him. So once again, what is the problem with our defense? I think it's a talent issue. I don't think it's an effort issue. I think these guys are doing what they can. Aaron Glenn has got to keep tinkering. He has to. And what does that mean? I mean, I think he's trying everything. I mean, if we're seeing all the Aquaras, we're not seeing Charles Harris.
Yeah.
Yet he was a captain. It's a talent. It's a talent issue.
Yeah, definitely not an effort issue. I would agree with that. Scheme, they got to adjust, right? I mean, they do. I mean, ourselves and 1,000 other podcasts are analyzing films and talking about it. They see it. They can see it. But, again, that's
we all have talked about Brad Holmes and said good things. It's not all been good.
Oh, no one's
more good than bad.
Absolutely.
But he did not help us on that D line in the draft or in free agency or during the trade deadline. That's 3 opportunities he's had.
Yeah, that's when they're playing the Bears and Montez Sweat's on the other side. That's folks start questioning. And
I wouldn't give up I wouldn't sign. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seemed like they gave away a lot.
Well, there's an argument both ways that can be made. You're getting a very good player, but it's going to cost you. It's going to not only draft collateral, but it's going to cost you big money. And the Bears did that. Okay, it's working out for them. Okay, I'm not sure Chase Young's going to be a Niner next year. They gave up a 3rd round pick for him. I don't know. Very, very difficult to say. I mean, maybe they're that confident in James Houston. He can come back the last 2 weeks of the season and solve a lot of problems. I'm not sure. I'm really not. But it was just like in the draft, Jalen Carter was there and they passed. I mean, I still stand by. I'm going to trust Brad Holmes on it. As great of a player as he was at Georgia, I just, what do I know? We don't know everything that's behind closed doors or whatever. So got to trust the guys that are in charge getting paid to do this. And I'll still stick with that. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's it's something you certainly want to second guess at times, right? Coach, what is this team? What have you been seeing in the last 5 weeks that's concerned you maybe the most?
Well, the Aline McNeil injury is what's concerned me the most. When that happened, this was the defense that could ill afford that. CJ Gardner Johnson going down, but who knows if it's for the year. There's banter out there today that maybe he'll be able to come back. But the injuries to the secondary, which we had been revamped, and that's something that Brad Holmes did spend a lot of time in capital on. The good pieces that he put in place, in regards to Pascal, McNeil, Arunzwike, some of these they've gotten hurt. They've not been able to hold up. We get Quentin Bohanna, we steal him off the practice squad of the Dallas Cowboys. This guy did a bunch of starting. He did some nice things. He gets stolen off of our practice squad. He's now a Tennessee Titan. And and that's the luck of the draw. So I mean, the defense is just taking so many hits with injuries, and the lack of really continuity with our offensive line, always kind of mixing and matching because of injuries to those poor guys. That's just it's how we're built. That's how we're trying to do this thing. And it's been just so withered and raw and beat up that the talent pool of the team is starting to show its exposure. And that's it's the best team we've seen in 62 years from at least a starting standpoint. I don't think they're better than the 1991 team. I don't think they are. I think that was a better football team. They had more talent on it, and we had a revolving door at quarterback. If you really look at it, I mean, everybody wanted Andre Ware to be the starter because they had this first round draft pick, according to Mel Kiper Jr., had been the greatest draft blunder in the history of the league had we passed him up. And Rodney Peete was the de facto starter and the guy that really was the people's starter and the person that was going to get the nod, but he couldn't stay healthy. And this Eric Kramer character came in there, and all he did was lead us down, to one of the greatest playoff triumphs this organization's had since 1957. Oh, it's the only one that we've had since 1957. Yep. But that was a great football team that had a phenomenal defense. They were phenomenal.
Yep.
Every layer was just loaded. That was a great defense. This defense isn't close to that.
I think about that 91 team too, but they had injury. Jerry Ball wasn't playing in that postseason.
No, you're right.
He was hurt, but Lawrence Pete came in, right?
Yep.
Like the guys stepped up who needed to step up. Spielman was still out there, and Blades was still out there. Melvin Jenkson's got interception. Oh man, let's go to a 91 playoff game recap.
Thumbs up.
That'd be better than this.
What I'm seeing, guys. Think about this, and not picking on Jerry Jacobs, but Jerry Jacobs has struggled all year at times. But in the first half of the season, he was making some big plays too, so it was almost forgivable. I think I said it reminded me of his coach, Dre Bly. He was capable of getting burned, but he also was capable of making big plays. Now we're not seeing the big plays as much, but we're still seeing the mistakes. So that's getting amplified. When the pass rush isn't there, now you're asking them to cover for 6-7 seconds at a time. And oh, by the way, when you're facing a running quarterback, it becomes 8-9 seconds. And guess what? Someone's getting shredded. I don't care who. Someone's getting shredded. So that all compounds. So again, I agree. It starts up front. Must generate a pass rush. You just have to. And
why do you guys think Aiden to me looks like he's held all the time? He never gets a call. Is he just playing too high? Is what the technique wrong? Like what is going on with Hutchinson and these tackles that just seem to be hugging him?
I'll leave that to you,
please tell me what's going on.
he does play with a rather high pad level. When you do that, you lock up high, and it looks like both people are holding. It looks like both people are holding. Either one of them's getting called or neither one of them's getting called. And the doggone guy dips inside all, he's allowed to. Again, that's where I go back to scheme. I've been around, the game as far as a coach for 29 years. And I played for about 5. At no point in time have I ever, at least, the defensive end has a purpose, whether they're crashing or they're playing with contain principle. He crashes all the time. If you're crashing underneath, you're going to get pinned and tangled up into offensive linemen, and they're not going to call holding. It's going to be a mess. They're not going to either see it or it's going to be just too hard to determine. So yes, it does. They get those things were real close where it looks like he's kind of being held up high and near around his neck, and maybe that he's getting pinned inside or whatever by a hand. He's just not. He's not yielding the holding calls that way, and it seems like there's nothing coming from the other side of substance whatsoever. It's just not effective. So it's that is an indictment, and we really do need to look at our offensive line, especially where it looks like our draft slot's going to be. Who knows? That might be the only silver lining we get if we hit the skids here and backdoor into the playoffs. We get a little higher draft slot. But have we ever talked like that before regarding the Lions? I don't know.
No, never.
But we looks like where we will draft, the highest value will be some sort of interior offensive lineman. That's just the feel that I get. There's a couple real good ones we may be in and around there. There's going to be some nice looking interior defensive linemen too, in and around that spot. How do we want to accent this? Do we want to accent it with some, sort of juggernaut inside that's just a firecracker that can just blow up field and draw an interior offensive lineman in so they can't chip and double and do that and slide and protect against Aiden Hutchinson like they've been? Who knows how we can be able to accent that? But, Aiden very much right now seems like he's getting, just all sorts of protection schemes against them because they're just not honoring or worried about anything else up there other than number 97.
Yeah, he's got to get some help, no doubt. And I agree. I don't know if he's being allowed to do it or if it's just the go-to move, the inside spin, and it's not working.
It's ineffective. Not at this level. It's not where, yeah. I'm not a defensive tackle is one thing. A defensive end, the spin technique, the spin move, you turn your back to a quarterback. Good luck against Justin Fields. Good luck against Lamar Jackson. You want to turn your back to them? Okay.
Good luck against Russell Wilson. Good luck against Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so you can't. So you're not going to see him for a flash of a second. Oh, yeah, you're not going to see him. That's for sure. He's going to be running downfield right past you. So that's number one. That's just not a good technique to be using anymore as a go-to plan A pass rush technique. Nope.
Perfect segue, right, to Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. They're coming to Ford Field, 8 p.m. national televised Saturday night game. Looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. But not going to be fun defending Russell Wilson, who struggled mightily last year and struggled early this year, but not struggling now. I believe they're 6-1 in their last 7 games. They're playing good football. They've beaten the Chiefs. They've looked like you thought they would look initially from the get-go when they got Wilson. But I'll start with you, Brad. What are they going to do differently to contain Russell Wilson? Because he's slippery like Fields, and he's a hell of a quarterback. What do you do?
Outscore him.
That's a good point. You could do that.
I just don't see this defense. I just don't. Aaron Glenn's going to have to prove me wrong, and I need to see something I haven't seen, and I hate that I haven't seen it. I have no idea what can be done. I would tell you, spying on Wilson, keeping them in front of you, that's our chance. I mean, getting some help with Jerry Jacobs. If Jerry Jacobs isn't on the field, who is? I mean,
yeah.
He's obviously the best option on the roster, or he wouldn't be on the field. And so we're in trouble. I mean, I think we have to go 2-2 in these last 4 games. I don't know how, and I don't know how we go 2-2 if we don't beat Denver at home.
Beat Minnesota twice.
That's hard to do. Beat any team twice is hard to do.
You might have to do it 3 times.
Yeah, it could be 3 in the playoff. At any rate, I'll take your answer to that. I do not have an answer.
A win of a season, then, in my opinion. If they beat them 3 times,
oh, that's awesome.
Then that's a good thing.
Yeah. I'd like to know when it happens. But at any rate, I'd love to hear the two of you. Like, okay, Lions defense, how do you stop Russell Wilson? I don't have the answer.
Coach, what do you think?
You keep them off the field at first. This is a team that the Denver Broncos have yielded one of the worst defensive performances in the history of this league this year.
That's true.
They gave up, I think something around 200 or 300 yards offense that game, or 200 or 300 miles of offense that game. That's what I meant to say. They were in the mile high city. They were in about the 300 mile high city, because that's about how many. They had 300 miles of offense that game. Miami did 70 points. We need to be able to be proficient like that. We gotta have time of possession. Big time, which means we're going to force the pass. If we have a major slide in our favor in regards to time of possession, that's going to mean they're going to be reduced time of possession for Denver. That means the amount of times they have the ball, it's going to be precious. They need to be able to move and be productive. It means they're going to probably have to throw. If they're going to have to throw, then we know what they're going to have to do. We know what's coming. Okay, let's generate rush. Let's generate some pressure. Is Russell Wilson the same caliber of scrambler he was with the Seattle Seahawks? Is he the same caliber of scrambler that Justin Fields is now for the Chicago Bears, or Lamar Jackson is? I don't think he's quite to that level anymore. Or if he does, it's different. He's maybe not quite as elusive. He's just maybe he triggers and processes things fast and gets going when he needs to get going. Trust me, Russell Wilson's a great player, and the atmosphere is not going to phase him with the loud crowd and all that kind of thing. We need that to be buzzing. We need those younger receivers, the Cortland Suttons and the Jerry Judys and those types of guys. To not be able to hear and communicate and be crisp on Saturday night. We want the defense of Denver just to have a hard time communicating and kind of get their nose kind of down into the ground and kind of buried into just surviving the play mode, just because it's just too hard to hear. We need to make it difficult that way, because we've seen that we've got scheme inconsistencies against running quarterbacks. We know that we're struggling melding pass rush and coverage. We have been pretty good on the run. So still, with the exception against the quarterback. So, keeping Russell Wilson on that sideline near Sean Payton and company is going to be the best way to defend him.
Yeah, I would agree. Keep him off the field. No turnovers. No turnovers. Can't have it. Too many last week, and in every game they've struggled and they've had turnovers. So that's the obvious answer. We can't be Captain Obvious here. Yeah, keep them off the field. Control the clock. Do what you do best. Run the ball. What was the game where which game was it where they just ran the ball? It was the Raiders game, I believe. They just ran and ran and ran again, and then ran some more, and then finally loosened it up a little bit. And that wasn't a great offensive performance in that game. That was probably the last best good defensive performance. They held them to 6. They won that game by 20 to 13, I believe, but they only allowed 1 touchdown. They played very well. Yeah, the Broncos are averaging 3 touchdowns a game, and over the last 6, they're going to have to score at least 24 points to win this game. But you got to control the clock and be able to be effective. Can't have mistakes. So let's go to predictions. Coach, how are you seeing this one?
Well, I'm going to go and do it this way, Drew. We've talked, at length tonight about, we've seen it before. And, there's that 3-letter word that we've associated with our team that there's no reason to talk like that, but it is very fair to say we've seen this before. What we have not seen before is them getting their foothold again and rebounding and responding.
Yeah.
And fairness, we should expect to see it. We need to see it, and we need to believe we're going to see it. We got to believe in Dan Campbell. If we're going to waver on him because the times are bad, that's called being a bandwagon fan and a fair-weathered fan. That's not what it's about. This is the time where Dan Campbell really shows his grit and his true colors, and he gets the guys to get a foothold and start digging again. We are at home at Saturday night. It's uncharted waters. Every win is monumental. It puts us in a much, much better position. Every loss is a piece of what could lead to a catastrophe and edges us closer to the Green Bay Packers and Minnesota Vikings. But every victory pushes us that much further ahead and starts locking us into a home football game during the second week of January. Which we have not talked about or seen in a long, long, long time. Lions are going to win on Saturday. Not going to say a score. I don't know what that could look like, but we're going to win.
Okay. Hubert, Brad, what do you think?
I didn't think so until Andy started talking. I didn't think there was. The last few weeks, the way this team is, the sum of what's happened over these last few weeks does not give me confidence. All the things that Andy so eloquently stated could happen. But guess what? All the things that Andy eloquently stated can happen. They can happen. And I'm there for it. I mean, you've got to 9 wins out of the 13 games. This isn't a bunch of chumps out there that don't know what they're doing.
No.
But it's how they react. The reaction to what has occurred is what I'm interested in, and I want them. Let's win it. It's a home game. We're not going to Mile High to do this on Saturday night. We're doing it in Detroit. Yep. So keep Russell Wilson on the sidelines, win the turnover battle, and win the game.
If they're able to do those things, I agree with you guys. I've only picked against the Lions one time this year, and that was in week 1, and I was not right about that, and I haven't been right about quite a few picks this year. So hopefully I'm wrong about this one, but I can't. I mean, if I was a betting man, which I'm not anymore, but now I think 27-19 they will fall if we see the same old. And I don't mean what we were talking about. I mean what we've seen the last 5 weeks, because this is not the same old team that we're used to. I reject that. As a fan, I'm rejecting that. This is a new team, new regime. But yeah, I can't see them. They're going to have to do a lot of things well that they haven't been doing well in the last 5 weeks. Not saying they can't do it, not saying they won't do it, but if I got to make a pick, I'm going to say they're not going to do it this week. But I want to be proven wrong. I want people to say, Drew doesn't know jack, what about anything. Great, cool. I'll be looking at my helmets and setting them up for the playoffs. Then for Lions hosting the game. Cool in the gang. I love it, but I'm gonna pick Denver in this one. Hope I'm wrong. Really hope I'm wrong. Well, fellas, we'll be enjoying that one on Saturday, and we'll be enjoying the rest of the season, and we'll be back next week to talk about this one and a lot more. So stick around and keep watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Give us your thoughts. Put some comments out there. We'd love to hear from you. For Coach Andy Shield, the Marine City Mariners, and for the U for Brad Harrison, I'm Drew. Take care, everybody. We will talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.